In this video, I'm going to tell you all about our garden map system and how I help keep all of this organized and more. This is not all of our plants once they get out into the various gardens, so that I know what we grew, so that I know which varieties worked and didn't work, so that I know where everything is, and so forth. If you want to see all about our map system, because this really does help, stay tuned and keep watching this video. So it is a gorgeous spring day and I just love being out here. So I wanted to film outside today and take a quick minute to tell you about how we keep track of all of these plants once they get out into the garden. Now, to keep track of them in the greenhouse, what I like to do is I write on every single one of these trays what is inside of these trays. So in this one, for instance, this is a mixed tray. So this is our pepper tray is what we call this tray. And you can see how each row is labeled at the front, and everything in that row is that. Now I have some split rows right here, and I will do them all the way to individual single rows, like on our tomato start tray or tomato start trays, because we have more than one. And then I know what everything is in there. So here's an example of a tomato start tray, and you can see, like right here in the middle, the back one has two tasty tomatoes. The next one is Amish Gold, and it goes all the way forward. And then tomatoes, we know it's one of those crops that we're going to end up repotting out of this tray before we ultimately plant them into the garden. So when that comes about, then we repot them and we make sure to really reference this. And then on every single cup, we either create a label or we label the cup. So anyways, getting back to this, once it's time to finally go plant outside in the garden, that's when this comes into play. And I will show you this. This is from our 2023 garden, and I will show you what's inside of here. So we obviously have our garden map right on the back from our main garden that we did last year. This is in a little sleeve, so I can take it outside with comfort and not ruin it. Last year, this was our map for our main garden that had just like a bunch of mixed different things in there, like we had potatoes, beets, onions, so many different things. I can't even name them all. This one was our garden that only had tomatoes, so it's a completely different sheet of paper. Every row is labeled. I reference other various landmarks, like maybe the water is over here, and I will always remember where it is, or the house is over here, and I will always know where that is so I can figure out the orientation when we're out there. So each different garden space gets a different papered map. We also do this for trees that we plant, or if we did like a big flower patch or something, we would do it for that. And when we are out in the field planting, that is not this sheet of paper that you're looking at right here. When we are out in the field planting, I get a clipboard and I have just a regular paper, and I just look at how many rows we're going to be planting based on the irrigation and how it's set up, and then I just write real quick lines all the way down and go out, and as we plant, I label on the draft paper. Pretty much it's making a draft of the garden map, because that map ends up looking really messy and it gets really dirty. And then after the garden is officially planted, then I will go back and I will make our nice paper maps that we end up keeping, that end up going in this sleeve. So you know how I was showing you those tape pieces that I do on the front of all of our start trays? Well, those turn into this. Let me open this up. So these are just regular white pieces of computer paper that I have taped right down the middle before all the blue tape came off of the trays and went onto this. And I label this Garden Seed Starts 2023. And then I try to put our tape pieces off of the trays in order of how we planted them. So this tray right here was all tomatoes that we were going to sell. This next tray was plants that we started particularly for a cold frame that we built last year. This next row right here, these were all of our, all of our tomatoes that we ended up keeping in that start tray. And it's front and back, and last year it got a little out of hand and it needed expansion onto an additional one. This was the first year that the one sheet did not fulfill our needs and we needed to upgrade to having two inside of our clear folder. So we have the maps, we have the tape, so we remember when we started things, what variety names we started, because these variety names that end up on the tape will end up on the cups, and then they will end up on our map. So I want to make sure those stay correct and stay across the board so that we know what we planted, so that we know what we like, so we can duplicate the really good stuff and keep going and keep expanding. Other stuff that I have in here, oh yeah, I have another map. This was from the cold frame. And then I also put the seeds that we started and some notes on here. So this was kind of just a little additional thing. Not really something we typically do every year. This next page is really important. This is something we do every season at the end of the season when we were putting the gardens to bed, when we were wrapping everything up. We do a garden notes for this season, and it is notes to ourselves to remind ourselves of things that we really liked, things that we really did not like, and just different ideas of how to set up the garden. So I'll read a couple of them. Plant squash not on edge and maybe trellis up. Find long English cucumber that keeps. So that's just like a little goal, I guess. I wrote less weird squash variety types like white and striped because people don't want to buy those at the farmer's market. I want to try the yellow patty pans, mostly plant Ford Hook zucchini. They're just little simple notes. But we reference this every year when we go to start our seeds and when we go to plant our gardens because the winter goes by and we sit down at the end of the winter and we go, okay, where do we start? And it's just like we draw a big blank. We kind of like know some plans, but this extra just one simple page of notes really, really helps. We also on our notes page last year wrote down all of our garden dimensions from our previous house because we knew that this move was going to be happening. So that was important for us to know, and that was just specific to that year. We had our on here our planting date as well as like the date we got everything in the ground, as well as our killing frost date last year was October 24th. Plants were dwindling prior to that though, we said. And then we also we wrote a plan for this house when we were still at our old house, which is kind of funny to look at now because we're actually doing quite a bit of that. We wrote tomato and cukes in the hoop house was like a goal of where we wanted to put those. We also want tomatoes outside, like a big field, 200, 300 plants, something like that. We wanted a separate cornfield, but we were thinking we wanted 2 varieties at that time of corn, so we needed big spacing, but now we've opted to just do 1 variety and a really big cornfield. The reason for 1 variety is to prevent cross-pollination. We wanted a specific ground cherry patch because those keep coming up in the garden, and we wanted a dedicated space. We're doing that this year. We wanted a chili field with mostly Big Jim varieties and to try a couple others. We're doing that. A lot of the plants that you see in here, like these ones right here, these are all green chilies from Sandia Seed Company. They are called Hatch Green Chili, although obviously we're not growing them in Hatch, New Mexico, but that's just the name on the seeds packet. We also wrote on here our main crops for trying to sell: corn, tomatoes, and chili. That is what we're planning this year. We are also planning potatoes. Those are a good staple, and all the other foods we enjoy eating. And this year, another thing that kind of came up, which isn't in this notes, is I want to make sure we really stock our pantry well. So I'm considering that too while we're planting, what we need for our family so that we can just eat from our pantry and we don't really have to go to the grocery store for veggies and stuff. All right, so that's that page. Just garden notes, general garden notes. This page right here, garden likes and dislikes. So this side are varieties and things that we really like that did really well. When it comes time to think of like specifically tomato varieties when we're going to go plant again, this really helps us remember, oh yeah, we really like those. Oh yeah, those were in that part of the garden. They did really well. We also do the same for dislikes, things that were not worth our time, that were not worth it at all, and we just omit those pretty much completely or plant just a couple. So the last part of what I put together in this little package every year is this page. This page is probably the funnest page because it is just pictures of the garden for that year. So obviously our kids are on here now. We have us at the farmer's market. We have like our kids eating corn. It's just adorable. And then I also put the garden year, garden 2023. And the cool thing about doing this is I put it on the back side of the envelope or of the plastic folder once I get this all back together. And then when I go to pull it out, that's what you see. So here's an example from 2022. So we have our garden map. We have all our pictures on the other side. And it's just pretty awesome. And the really neat thing is that I save these every year, and I just have a folder inside a file cabinet in our house, garden, and I have them from every year. So it's really cool to look back at kind of like what we did in 2021, what we did in 2020, and just to look at the varieties that we've been growing this whole time, and to read some of those garden notes and to see the expansion that we've done is really cool. And it can be really inspiring. Like, look back at 2019, we had all these raised beds. This was 2 houses ago. So it doesn't really pertain to us anymore, but it's interesting to see, like, mortgage lifter tomato. Oh, we're still growing that one. Or matchbox peppers. Yep, we're still growing that one as well. Sweet treats tomato. I don't actually grow that one anymore. That one fell off of our list. Big Zack tomato. I don't grow that one anymore either. The plants were too big and unmanageable. But it's like a good reminder, and it triggers my memory on what that plant was like, how it produced, at least this season. And this season, I also remember I did really well on onions, so I might actually check out which kinds I grew this year. So, pictures, maps, like our cornfield was inside of our garden, so I can tell exactly how big that was. Not very big. The expansion there is really cool. Back before we had kids, cornfield in the back. Tried to color code it back then. It's just kind of like a really neat thing to reference and look at. So we did sunflowers in the front, corn in the back. I referenced where the house is. This was 2016, so this one was a while ago too. Here's one of our first ones. You can see this map, unfortunately, I thought it would be fine if I could, I'll show the other side, if I would just leave it out at the garden, and you can see what happened, obviously. My map system is obviously a little different too. I did dots where each thing was. Now I don't do that. I'll show you a more current one. Now what I tend to do is hold it on its side, and then in the row I will write what it is, and then I will put how many there are and circle the number. And that works a lot better than the way I used to do it with doing various dots and then connecting them all together. This was back in 2015, so you live and you learn, right? And it's also really cool to see the pictures from back then. Just totally different. This was our first garden ever that was that small. I'll zoom in on that one. That was it. That's what started all of our crazy obsessions. Here's another picture of how small it was. So you got to start somewhere, and the reason this doesn't have a garden map is because I didn't write a map. I wasn't really in charge of this garden. It was kind of just like okay, we can do a garden. I didn't really want a garden back then, and I wish we would have had a map to see what varieties we were growing back then, how many of the different varieties, our planting date, our likes, our dislikes, our killing frost. All of those notes would have been so interesting to see now. And geez, look at the weeds in that picture. That's not very good. We have definitely improved our weeding practices as well. But having the map and thinking about it ahead of time of how you're going to organize all this stuff and how you're going to know where your stuff is, because I know I can go and plant some dragon tongue beans next to some other beans, and in a couple weeks I won't remember what I planted there. So having the map and having it written down really does matter, and it will matter for you if you decide to do it. I encourage you to decide to do it because it'll help you grow as a gardener and learn what you like and what you didn't like. I always give the example of if we would have just wrote like jalapenos in this row, my husband would have never found out that he loves Parks Whoppers jalapenos, and those are the only jalapeno variety he will ever grow. And he says they are not like any jalapeno as far as they just get really big and they produce really well. And because we wrote the variety name down, we know that. And if we would have just written jalapeno or not even written anything and just popped it in the ground and been like, oh, there's a plant. Oh, that's a jalapeno. Okay, cool. We have a jalapeno here. We would have never found that out. So this is our map system. I hope it might motivate somebody to do something similar. This is the simplest method I've found that I can control with just paper and pencil. I didn't need a computer. I didn't need to spend time moving lines on a computer screen or worry about a software going away or the computer getting a virus or whatever. Not that I'm against computers. I use them all the time, obviously, but this is just so easy. And I love that I can have it throughout time and I can just easily reference it and go grab it. And when I need to make another map It's very easy for me to make, and just sit down and do all the lines and put it all together and start making our garden folder for the year. Well, I think that's all I have for explaining this system. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Of course, this is just my system, and maybe you have a different system that you like. And if you do, I just think it's awesome that you are writing down what you are growing for your own records so that you know and so that you can pass that along and tell other people about it, because in my opinion, we should all really be growing our own food, and it just helps you to become more knowledgeable. And this is one of the tools that we use that is so simple, but I really think it is a critical part of making our garden successful and motivating us for the future, and also just helping us really remember, because I will not remember stuff if I don't write it down. And maybe you're like me, maybe you're not. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this quick little video about our garden system and how I help keep everything organized for us. If you did enjoy it, please consider liking it, and please consider subscribing to our channel so that you can follow how much we are expanding our gardens, and maybe go take a look at some of our old videos so you can see where we came from. Although, of course, I wish I would have started YouTube a long time ago, way at the beginning, to really see all the growth, because gardening is cool. You can learn something all the time, and I feel like I'm always learning. So thanks so much for watching.